Hey guys, Brad Speed here. Look, today I got the CRF behind me, and I'm sort of going to go through a list of the things that I've done at this bike. I've owned it for just over a year, and I think that the current setup in this bike, if you're looking for a reliable trail bike that you can ride on the road, it's road registered and road legal for the most part, and you can take it out on the trails and keep up with, pretty much anything. The guys I'm riding with have 250 and 300cc two-strokes. And anytime I'm not keeping up with them, it's because of my lack of skill, not because of the bike. So that's what I aim this bike at, just being a really great road trail bike, super reliable, don't have to think about it. And I think I've pretty much hit the mark with this one. So I'm going to split this up into 3 categories. First category of parts is, if you're going to buy one of these bikes, you must have this. This is essential. It's first category. Second category, not essential, but it does make a big difference. Third category, doesn't really make a difference, and certainly not essential. Now, to be honest, a bunch of the stuff on this bike's kind of really overkill. I'm OCD. I love tinkering with stuff. This is my baby at the moment, and I love taking it out and riding it. So I've done so much stuff to this bike. I'm not going to be able to list everything off, but I'm going to be pretty honest and pretty brutal about a whole bunch of the parts that I've put on it that just do not make a difference at all, but it made me feel good to put them on. Okay, the must-haves up first. This is first category. Now, in my opinion, these are the things that you absolutely must have if you're going to buy one of these bikes and road trail it. There's 5 things in this category. There's handguards, tyres, suspension, exhaust, and sprockets. I'm going to go through them all one by one. Now, first up, the Barkbusters, or the handguards. These are Barkbusters brand. These are the Ego ones. They're pretty cheap. They're like 150, 160 bucks. These are already on here when I bought the bike. I just put new covers. And you see, with brand new covers that they're all bashed up already, and that's why these are so good. They're bashed up so that my hands aren't. The other big thing is I put these levers on after I bought the bike, and there's not a single mark on them. I've never had to replace them. They're completely fine. Both of them are perfect, and that's all down to these handguards. I've dropped the bike and fallen off a bucket load of times. Never had to worry about breaking them, because the last thing you want to do is break a clutch lever 5 k's, k's out on a trail, and make it really painful on yourself trying to get the bike back. These are honestly worth every single dollar. Probably the first thing I'd put on one of these if I ever had to get another one. Next up, tyres. So I have a Pirelli MT21, I think it is, Rallycross on the front. And then I have the Dunlop D606 on the back. Now, when I bought this bike, it still had the factory tyres on it. And particularly with D606, man, it makes such a huge difference. In the dry, doesn't make that much of a difference if I'm honest, but if you go out when it's wet or on sort of sandy trails or particularly the mud, man, I've never had an issue with traction with this tyre. And even I talk up the D606, but this Rallycross front, man, what a great tyre. I've been out a bunch of times with the guys with the bigger bikes. They're often having issues with front traction, with the front washing out, and it's rare that I get a washout issue with these. And in terms of pressure, with these I run 20 on the road and between 10 and 12 psi when I'm out on the trails, and they just work. But honestly, cannot highly recommend these tyres enough, this combo. The other thing I forgot to mention with the D606 on the back, it is a bigger tyre than the factory, bigger profile, a bit fatter, and it looks heaps better than the factory tyre. Factory tyre compared to this looks really skinny. I know it's not all about looks, but if you put the right tyre in there that works well and it looks better, that's just a win-win. Next category is suspension. To be honest, this is where I spent the most money. I've done it only recently, and man, it made such a difference. Like, I've been riding for basically a year on the stock suspension and wondering why I was bouncing around and often having trouble, thinking it was just my skill level, and it was actually the bike. Now, particularly the rear shock in these, you don't have to spend very long on the forums about these. Everyone complains about the rear shock. It is so poor from factory. It's so soft. The other issue with mine was when I bought the bike, it had a lowering link in it. I'm not sure. I think it's about a 20 or 30 mil lowering link. But it just gave me even less droop and travel from the start. Well, probably too much droop because the bike's drooping down too much. But this gave me even less travel. When I'm riding around, the bike would be bottoming out. Every time I do a jump, I'd be bottoming out on the bash plate all the time. In terms of what I put in it, I've put the Ohlins rear in it. which, man, what a difference. Like, this shock is just phenomenal. I adjusted it wrong when I first went out, and it was still, the difference was unbelievable. Then when I actually adjusted it correctly, which if you have the same shock and you've had an adjustment issue, I did make a video on this. But when I adjusted the rebound properly, man, honestly, no notes. This shock is perfect. And again, same with the D606. You know, it's not about the looks, but man, it is so sexy to have this Ohlins canister hanging off the side. I think Ohlins knew exactly what they were doing with this one. You pay big money for the shock, but you know, they've mounted that external gas reservoir in the most conspicuous place possible, which you know, you got to love. Spend big money. That's nice to you know, get these little extras. Now, the other thing I did is I did do the front fork upgrade, the Ohlins fork upgrade. Now, the kit comes with 2 springs and the top caps. Now, most modern bikes, basically one side of the fork, I believe it's the left side, is the actual shock absorber, and the right side is just a spring. Think it's either that way or it's the opposite, but basically one side's actually a shock with oil and valves in it, and the other side does have oil in it, but it's pretty much just a spring. So I got my suspension tech to rebuild the forks, got him to change the seals and everything when he did it. He did a really nice job, and while he was in there, instead of just installing the spring, he sort of advised me that you know, if you just put the spring in there, it just makes it stiffer. It doesn't actually give it more damping, and that's what I wanted, was more damping. So I got him to re-oil it and also change the valves in there as well. And geez, it makes a big difference. It actually, like, you can hear it when you compress the fork. It's actually damping now, whereas before it didn't really make any noise when it was going up and down. Maybe I can show you compressing it without making it too bumpy. You can actually hear that compression and sucking back through noise, because it's actually damping now, which it never did before. Obviously, it's not about the noise, but the noise just tells you that it's actually doing a job now. It's not just bouncy springs and fluid, which it pretty much was before. To be honest, I wasn't even going to do the front. I was just going to do the rear, because the rear was the biggest problem. I did order the front anyway, though, because I thought, you know, me being a bit obsessive compulsive, I wanted it all to match. Now, I did the rear, and with the rear right, it made the issue with the front so much more noticeable. The front just felt unsettled. It felt soft. As soon as I did the front suspension, you know, again, huge difference. So, you know, I'm going to go ahead and say that at least the rear is essential, because they're so bad from factory. But if you're going to do the rear, do the front, because doing the rear exacerbates the issue with the front, so you kind of end up having to do both. Now, to be honest, of everything I've done to this bike, the suspension has been the most worthwhile investment. Before and after, it's been the biggest difference, and it's made the bike so much more rideable. You know, I'm not like a fantastic rider, you know, I'm a novice, you know, on all accounts, and it makes me look like I'm a better rider than I am. It makes the bike so much more responsive on, you know, in terms of the handling, so much more predictable. You get a lot more feedback through the bike as well, and it makes it so much more comfortable. Now, me personally, for the most part, you know, my personality is I'm an all or nothing person. So I was like, if I'm going to do shocks, I want to get the best possible option. That's why I got the Ohlins. You don't need to do this. Another really great option is if you go to a suspension tech, you can get the factory suspension rebuilt. So in the case of the rear, you get it re-sprung, re-valved, and then the same in the front. Now, you know, if you're working to a budget, if you get at least the rear re-sprung and re-valved, this will make a huge difference. A mate of mine has exactly the same bike. This is what he did. I think it cost him something like $600, and that was for like a K-Tech spring, so a much stiffer spring on the rear shock, and he pulls it apart when he's doing that, re-valves it, so the damping comes up and increases to match the new spring. Otherwise, it ends up just being a big pogo stick, just all bouncy. So, you know, you don't need to buy the Ohlins. You can spend a lot less and get probably 80% of the same effect. You certainly don't need to go out, you know, rush out and buy Ohlins for it. Okay, coming around the other side to number 4. Obviously done the exhaust. This is the other big ticket item. You know, I think this is something like $2 and a bit grand or something, because we've done the full system. Now, you don't have to do the full system, obviously. The reason I say this is essential for road riding. The amount of times I've nearly been cut off, you know, nearly been run over because someone's just not looked and they've just merged straight into me. You know, it's ridiculous. So people on the road just aren't paying attention. If you don't want to get run over, you know, they might not look and see you, but if they hear you, hopefully most of the time they'll at least make a bit more effort to look for you and try and find you before they merge into you. That's really the only reason I say this is essential. Now, it's obviously just a side benefit that, damn, it sounds so much better with this exhaust. Like, I love the sound of this bike with the exhaust. Modern bikes are dangerously quiet from factory. Honestly, it's ridiculous. This thing was silent from factory to the point that even my wife, who's not a rev head by any stretch of the imagination, even she said, that thing's too quiet, you need to make it louder. So that's why I said this is essential. If you're just taking it on trail only, yeah, whatever. Just do it if you want the sound. But if you're riding on the road, they're too quiet. It's dangerous. Now, as you can see, I took the DB killer out of mine. Pretty easy to take out. There's just a little tack that they weld at the bottom. You knock that off with a flat blade and the rest of it slides out, the actual DB killer. But this one here obviously did the full system. The factory exhaust isn't like this. It's not linked here. It's actually welded to a pipe that comes down to this joint here. So when you put the Arrow, and I think most of the other aftermarket exhausts, you have to buy the can and the link pipe together. And then obviously I did that and then rode it for a few months. Made a big difference. It does make a difference to the performance. Definitely had a bit more low down torque. It was a bit more responsive on the throttle. But the header made a little bit more of a difference. The header's not essential. I wouldn't even put that in the same category of essential. I really just did it because it sort of looked a bit gross, the factory header with my nice stainless link pipe and exhaust. And, me being OCD, I just wanted it all to match and be the same. So I bought the Arrow header for it as well. A good mate of mine, if you follow the Scooter Street channel, is actually an Arrow dealer. So I was able to get the exhaust for this a little bit cheaper through him. But, you certainly don't need to put an Arrow on it. I just put it on there because it was a good exhaust that I had, good access to. I think Delkovic, I think that's how you pronounce it. They do exhaust systems, and they're really cheap for these. Like, they're surprisingly cheap. You probably get a full system for like $600 or $700 or something. I think with the all up, the Arrow was closer to $2,000, probably a little bit more actually, by the time you do the header, the link pipe, and the muffler. So, if you can find something a bit cheaper and you don't mind the look of it, go for that. Okie dokie. Lastly, in the necessary category, got sprockets. Now, what I mean by sprockets, I mean reducing the gearing of the bike. So factory is 1440. I have on this put 1348. And I put a new chain on there when I did it. I put an X-ring chain on there just because I've used them before and they last a really long time. But you don't have to do that. But yeah, the different sprockets, I tried a bunch of different combinations. I tried even to go as high as I could. I went to a 1438, and the bike was doing like 150 k's an hour on the highway. Just cruising. It made such a big difference to the top speed, but down low it was completely useless. So the more I actually took it off-road, originally when I bought it, I was just riding it mainly on-road. The more I took it off-road, the more I realised you really need to go down in the gearing. So I like this setup, 1342. Most of the trails that we're riding are single track or relatively tight sort of, not ultra technical, but relatively technical stuff. I'm able to pretty much ride around in second gear, maintaining a good speed. And then I have first there as a backup if I get stuck or if I'm on a hill climb or if I lose some momentum. To be honest, I would like to put leave the 13 and put even a bigger on the rear, maybe like a 44 or a 45, I think would be really good. Just bring second down that little bit more, and you'd have first there as pretty much just like a tractor mode, but also just to help pop the front wheel. I think that would be really beneficial because I'd say probably the only other complaint with these is that they're not like a speed machine in terms of power, but because they're really heavy, it can be a little bit difficult to pop the front wheel. Again, I'm not like a expert rider, so my technique probably sucks as well, but because they're a little bit underpowered, say compared to a 252 stroke or something like that, and because they're pretty heavy, it can be a little bit more difficult to pop the front wheel. So I feel like if I had a 45 in the rear, it would just assist me a little bit. But how this setup is now, it's great to ride on trails. I've not come across a situation where I've been like, man, I wish I had lower gearing right now. For the most part, it's really great. Okay, that's all the stuff that I think is really essential if you want to road trail one of these. Now, the next category, I'm going to zip through it pretty quick because there's so many parts. I could go on for days with all this stuff, but I'm just going to list off all the stuff that I think definitely makes a difference and is worthwhile, but it's not essential. Okay, I mentioned them before. These levers, these are just eBay levers. I think you can get them on like AliExpress. I've got heaps of AliExpress stuff on this bike. But I think these are really good. These do make a really big difference to the feel and the responsiveness of how the clutch and the brake feel. And they're those levers that sort of, you call them like the extra pivot point, just a bit tougher. But I think just the action of them makes them feel heaps nicer. It's hard to describe, but for like 25 or 30 bucks or something, these were so cheap, they make a really big difference. Now, if you got one of these, you might notice I've got a different headlight. This is actually a CRF300/CRF450L headlight. Just bought this on AliExpress. I bought it actually, it was a standard headlight with the red cover because I wanted the red cover. And then I bought this LED headlight extra. So it's got like a nice, if I get it in focus, like a nice V-shaped daytime running light, which looks really cool during the day. Then at night, again from AliExpress, I've got this waterproof switch here. So switch that on, you got your main headlight, and then the high beam and low beam just function as normal. Now it looks better. Why do I think it makes a difference because it does actually function way better than the factory headlight. The LEDs are tons brighter, and I think they really do make a great difference on road. And with the high beam on too, the way that these headlights work, normally with most headlights, when you flick the high beam on, the low beam turns off. This, because it's LED, it's not going to overheat the headlight. So when you flick it to high beam on this, both stay on. Low beam and high beam stay on. And I think that makes a really big difference riding at night. Okay, these here, recovery tuggers. Got one on the front and one on the rear seat. These are cheap, they're really good. I bought these because my mate, who has the same bike as me, he got really badly stuck in the mud. We went out for a ride one day. We're out there stuck for like 45 minutes trying to get him out. If we'd had one of these, it still would have been a bit of a pain, but it would have been so much easier. There's a couple different mounts that you can get. This is the KTM mount, but I just like the way that it attaches better than the other one has like a little strap that goes around. I just didn't really like that. So I put these on. If you really wanted to, you could take them on and off. It looks a bit dumb, but it, function over appearance sometimes. The decal kit. There's just an eBay decal kit. I already like it. It's really, really thick. It's made by a local guy in Australia. He's here to sell them on eBay. If I ever want to sell this one day, I want to pull these decals off. It'll still look, brand new underneath. Click and ride indicators. Now these are brilliant, especially if you want to ride sort of road and trail. These here, it's just like a guitar jack. It just plugs in here. It was a little bit of a muck around to install. You see I've had to muck around with the headlight mountings to mount this headlight. I have done a video on that before, but a bit of a pain at the front. Get the camera right where that mount was. The rear was pretty easy because I have a tail tidy on it. But the only other thing is you do have to change the relay in these. When you do that, I'm trying to remember where the relay was. It was on, it was behind here. So you just want to put an LED indicator relay in it. That's it, literally right there. So just tucked in there. Again, that was another $15 thing on eBay. Now I will just mention, because it isn't clear, Click and Ride, the brand that does these, they sell resistors that you can buy with these. And the idea of the resistors is if you just put these on and leave the normal relay, they flash really rapidly and it just looks really stupid. So the idea is you put the resistors in and it creates some resistance through the system and slows it back down to a regular speed. On this bike, it does not work. I bought them, they don't work. You have to put an LED relay in it. There's no other workaround. The relay is pretty cheap. I would suggest, if I were you, if you just pop this 10mm out, you can pop the rear brake reservoir out really easy. And just pop that relay out and have a look at it. Take a photo of it, and then when you go on eBay, just make sure that you compare the photo to what they're selling and make sure it's the right relay. It's a pretty standard relay for a lot of different motorcycles. While we're around here, this is a DRC tail tidy. I really like this tail tidy. It's beautiful quality. It's powder coated, and the factory tail light protrudes out to here. It looks really bulky and stupid. This one obviously tucks under. It looks way nicer, a bit more hidden. Now the other great thing with this is the factory tail setup has a dedicated plate light and then a tail light separately. This one uses the tail light as the plate light. Now why is this good? It means it gives you an extra 12-volt line which is connected to the ignition. What I mean by this is what was the plate light on the factory setup Those wires now are redundant. They don't need to do anything, but they are a nice supply of 12 volt power when the key is on. When you turn the key off, they turn off. What do I use this for? This one here, this is a quad lock wireless charging head. This is fantastic. I love this. It's great for out on the trail. You can look at your maps. It's good for keeping track of where you're at and where you want to go. And even just for out on the road, it's great for maps and whatever else. I've got a little damper on it as well. But the thing with this, because I have that spare 12 volt line, I've wired that up to this, which means that right now it's off. It's not going to drain my battery. As soon as I turn the key on, it turns on. And I don't have to worry about it flattening the battery and draining it when the bike's not running. Turn it off, off it turns. So I'm sort of a bit erratic, you know, running through the bike really erratically at the moment. I'm just sort of picking things up as I notice them. But on that note, up here, I've got the little gear selector gauge. This is pretty cheap. Obviously on these, they don't have a gear shift indicator on the dash. So these are just a little extra thing. It actually plugs into a factory plug on the bike. If you're super familiar with these bikes, you'd know it's the same motor as the CBR250. So I'm assuming the CBR250 has a gear indicator on the dash because there's a blanked off plug from factory underneath the seat. You literally pull the blank out and plug this straight in and it gives you all your gear indications. There's a little bit of a lag. You switch gear and it takes about 2 seconds to actually display the new gear, like 2 seconds after you've released the clutch. It's a bit of mucking around to set it up, but I've actually done a video before on how you calibrate this because the instructions were badly translated from Chinese to English and they weren't particularly clear. Probably notice if you've got a keen eye that I got Protaper Bars on this. It actually already had these bars when I bought it, probably because the person who owned it before me crashed it, and the factory bars are really weak, so they often bend really easy. So to be honest, I don't have a frame of reference of whether these bars are any better, but they do a job. I've crashed it heaps of times and they've never bent, so I'm happy with them. I've come under here, I've got the Acerbis bash plate. Now this is plastic. Now it sort of turned me off a little bit at the start, but the more I looked into it, I believe the plastic's actually better because it has flex in it. So if you hit a big item, it has the ability to flex and then go back. Now if you've got like an aluminium or steel one, if you cup a big whack, it can actually smash into the engine or interfere with your gear shifting. Because obviously being steel and alley, if you bend it, it's not going to bend back very easily. This plastic one, I've never had a problem with it and I've smashed it a whole bunch of times. So I'm super happy with that. To be honest, I would almost put the bash plate in the category of must-have because it does make a really big difference. While we're down here, I've got a hammerhead shifter on it, and on the other side, I've also got the hammerhead rear brake pedal. Now these are awesome. I really like the brake pedal, but to be honest, I mostly put it on there because I put the shifter on. Now the rear brake pedal definitely has more feel about it. I couldn't tell you why, but the shifter makes a huge difference. It's definitely longer, which makes a big difference, but somehow the feeling of it is better. I don't know how to describe it to you, but it definitely feels better when you're riding. These two, I got this on sale. I just picked it up because it was cheap. These are, I think, SPP brand pegs. They're pretty sharp on the top. You definitely want to wear some decent shoes when you're riding with them. But these make a really big difference. I like them a lot. They have tons and tons of grip on your boots when you're riding around. Never had issues with my boots slipping off. And likewise as well, these are Acerbis frame guards. You see, they're really bashed up. So that has copped tons of abuse. It's saved my frame from having all the paint ripped off and rusting. A mate of mine doesn't have these, and his is like worn down in several places to bare metal. So I think they're pretty expensive for what they are, plastic covers, but I think they are worthwhile. Now a seat cover. This is a strike seat. I don't know if these are just in Australia or if they're sort of all over the place, but there's heaps of different places that do sort of gripper seat covers. I custom ordered this one because I wanted the colours to match. Honestly, this does make a huge difference. My daughter has a 110, a CRF 110, and she doesn't have a seat cover on hers. And when I'm riding hers around, just mucking around, man, my butt is slipping around everywhere. So I honestly don't know how people ride with just the normal seats on trail, because you'd just be sliding around everywhere. I've never had that issue with this bike. It did originally have a strike seat, a gripper seat on it when I bought it. It's just a red one, and I've replaced it with this one with the ribs because I wanted the look. And the other one was a bit worn, to be honest. But yeah, great. I don't really have a frame of reference other than my daughter's 110, but these honestly do make a difference. You're not sliding and slipping around all over the place. Running out of light here, I'm going to have to hurry up. Last couple of things really I put in category 2. I did make a video about this. These have from factory a side stand switch. What does this do? Basically it tells the bike when the side stand's down. So if the side stand's down and you put the bike into gear, it automatically shuts the bike down. Why is this a problem? If you're riding on a trail, these stands, as soon as they get a bit dirty in the join, the spring's not very strong, it should be a bit stiffer. And what can happen is if you do a bit of a jump or sort of go into a hard rut, the stand can actually flick down enough to engage the switch and the bike shuts down. That's really frustrating. So I did a stand switch delete, which basically just shorts the stand wiring, tells the bike that the stand is always up regardless of what's happening, so you can never get one of these annoying shutdowns because the stand flicked down. Now this here is a bit of an unsung hero, this radiator guard. I can't remember what the brand was. It's written here somewhere, maybe Tough Dog or something, I don't know. But basically it's just a big frame that actually comes down. You see it through here. It comes and mounts back through the bolt here. So it's just a big steel frame that actually comes through with these steel dowels, and just basically it's a brace. So if I put this down really hard on the left hand side, there's no way that the radiator can get crushed or damaged, because this brace is completely protecting it. You see it there. Again, this wasn't particularly expensive, but if you lay the bike down hard on a rock and you smash your radiator, that will be expensive. So, you know, for $160 or whatever it was, I think this is a worthwhile investment. I was hesitant to put these on the list, but I think I will. These mirrors, these little underbar mirrors, I really like them. I think they make a difference because I leave them on. I think they make a difference, mainly because I leave them on when I go trail riding. I think if you have big factory mirrors, you have a tendency to take them off when you go on the trails. I often, you know, a couple of the guys haven't really ridden before, so going for rides with them for the first time, particularly if they're at the back of the pack, it's nice being able to look in your mirrors and just check that they're still there. I haven't fallen over and gotten stuck somewhere, which I've a couple of times not seen them in my mirrors, and I've gone back and found them and they were a little bit stuck. So I also go riding with my daughter with her 110, and it's nice being able to look back and check on her, because these don't interfere with riding the bike off-road at all, and there's no chance of them getting damaged. So I just leave them on all the time. So I think that is a bit of a benefit, you know, having mirrors that don't interfere with riding the bike off-road at all. The other thing I'd mention with these is I don't think they're particularly legal, depending on where you are. I'm fairly certain they're not legal where I am, but you know, you just run the risk, I guess. Probably the last thing on this list, I've put a Denali Sound Bomb horn on it. This is the loudest one you can get that you can just run the factory wiring to. I think it's 15 amp or something like that. If you go to the next one up, which is the dual tone, you have to basically run a whole wiring setup for it. You have to run a relay and blah blah blah, because it's a higher amperage horn than the factory wiring can handle. So look, does it make a difference? Yeah, I think it does. It's way louder. And what I mainly use it for is if I'm being cut off by someone on the road and I'm really angry, I use it for that, obviously. But when you're out on the trail, we sort of have a rule with me, you know, me and a couple of mates, that if you get stuck, beep your horn, and someone will know to come back if you're sort of the last person in the pack. And it is good for that because it's way louder in the bush, and because it's a deeper tone, I think it probably does cut through, you know, longer distances, sort of longer wavelengths. If you understand much about sound, tend to travel longer distances more easily. This is why if you're near a concert, you'll always hear the doof doof of the bass, but you know, the further away you go, you'll lose the high pitch frequencies. They travel a bit further, I think, because it's low tone. It does travel a bit further. Maybe I'm going too far into it, but I like the horn. I think it does make a difference. Okay, so those are all the things that actually make a difference. The rest of the parts that I put on this don't make a difference at all. The only part that maybe is an exception to that, I've put these Acherby's seal savers on here. Look, I don't really know if they make a difference because I never had an issue with my seals. I just thought, yeah, it's not a bad thing to put on there for the money. But in terms of everything else, all these Zeta parts, this stuff, the plugs, this thing, the chain guard, all this sort of stuff. I've got a bunch of this sort of stuff from AliExpress. It's all cheap, and to be honest, they're just all dress up parts. This thing here, all this sort of stuff. This thing here. I've got like these little bungs, little frame bungs to stop water and mud and crap going through there. What else have I put on it? Oh, these things, you know, nice little caps. I painted the wheels black as well, just with a direct to metal 2K black. It's meant to be satin, but it kind of looks a bit more glossy than it should. Looks nicer, doesn't make a difference. Absolutely not. There's a ton of other little bits and pieces and this sort of stuff, and just, look, to be honest, I just like tinkering with this bike, which is why I put all these parts on there. I'm not going to pretend that they make a difference, because they don't. They just look nice, and they give me something to do, and they make me feel better about the bike. In terms of future plans, what I'd probably, you know, do to it in the future, or definitely do it in the future, what I'd probably recommend to someone else as well. I'm going to do the Acerbis aftermarket tank, the plastic tank. These are a 5 litre. They're a steel tank as well from factory. The Acerbis is plastic and it's 12.5 litre, so it's 2.5 times the capacity. I do about 140 k's to a tank. The Acerbis, I reckon I'll get like 350, 360 with the Acerbis. So I probably won't fill it up all the way, but yeah, we'll see how we go. The thing I notice is these dent real easy because they're steel. I've got a big dent in this one, the paint chipped, I've had to touch it up. My other couple of mates who have just the factory tank, they've dented theirs too. It's not a big deal, but it is a little bit annoying. The plastic Acerbis tank as well, they have a couple of options. They do it in black and clear. I'm going to get the clear one because I think it is beneficial being able to see what the fuel level is in the tank. Like I said, I probably, or almost definitely won't fill it up all the way when I'm going trail riding. We generally do like 60 or 70 k's in a day, and we're going to, a relatively long trail ride. That's sort of 4 or 5 hours, usually buggered by then, so it's not like it's fuel's an issue with that. And I don't want to make the bike needlessly heavier. But when I do go on sort of longer trips, if I go for, a longer ride, or maybe we go somewhere over a weekend and do a couple of rides doing camping or whatever, it'd be nice to have that bit of extra fuel there. And also, the plastic tanks don't dent, obviously. Same as the belly pan, the protector, the bash plate, that's the word I was looking for. Because it's plastic, it has a lot more sort of give. So I think that'll be good when I do get around to it. The other thing is I was going to put a front disc guard on it. I have nicked my disc a couple of times in a rock, and it didn't warp it, luckily. But I think having one of those, big plastic protectors, possibly it's beneficial. Maybe it'll do nothing. I did actually order one just on AliExpress, and they didn't ship it, so I got a refund. I'm going to have to reorder it. But I think that's, I don't know, maybe it's a worthwhile thing doing. Don't know until I try it. I've run out of light pretty quickly, so I'm not going to go any further into it, but I think I covered everything else. If you're considering buying one of these bikes, just as a general, my opinion of the bike, as I said, the guys I ride with, they all have big, proper trail bikes, Huskies and Gas and Better and, all big, proper, serious bikes, KTM as well. And for a while, I considered getting a 2-stroke or something a bit bigger, but I've been riding on the road for a long time. Never really ridden on the dirt until the last year. And like I said, I'm not like a stuntman, crazy good rider, just a basic sort of rider. To learn on, I can't think of a better bike. It has exactly the right amount of power. It's very forgiving. And the service intervals on it are absurd. It's like 12,000 Ks to a service, like to an oil change, which is ridiculous. Honestly, I don't think that I've done more than 2,000 Ks without changing the oil, which I probably only do 2,000 Ks in a year. So, you just do an oil change once a year and you're sweet. Like even the spark plug, the service interval on the spark plug's like 60,000 Ks just to check it, not replace it. So the thing about this bike that draws me back into and convinces me not to get something a bit more powerful and a bit more fun and a bit lighter, like a TE250 or something. This bike, I never have to worry about it. Turn the key, press the button, it starts every time. It never has problems. I'm never, like the other guys I go riding with, their bikes are constantly at the dealership getting serviced. They're constantly getting stuff done. They're constantly breaking stuff. I've never taken this bike to a dealership, and the whole time I've owned it, I just change the oil once at home myself. All the parts are cheap, and you just don't have to worry about it. It's easy. So that's why, in my opinion, I think this is the best learner bike, the best bike to learn on, because super forgiving, cheap to own, cheap to maintain, parts are super accessible. And like I mentioned, there's not been a single time that the other guys on their big, serious professional proper bikes have been able to do something that I haven't been able to do. Once or twice I've not made it up a hill climb that they have, and it was because of my lack of skill. I didn't, I didn't commit to it enough and hit it with enough speed. My issue, not the bike. So I certainly think that if you're considering buying one of these and you're a bit of a novice, or even if you just want to do a bit of road riding as well, because a lot of two-strokes aren't great on the road if you want to do a bit of touring or a longer sort of ride, these are perfect. And it's going to be really hard for me to get rid of this one day because it just seems to do everything so well. Aside from the complaint of it being a bit heavy and the suspension being really crap from stock, once you fix up those couple of things, they are such a great bike to learn on. And I really rate it.